Hey guys. Tonight take a breath. Dim the lights. Put the phone down face first on the nightstand. This is one of those stories you don't need to watch. You just let it happen to you. Tonight we're telling the history of money. In 1 minute. Which is funny because this will absolutely not take 1 minute. Will take a while. Very calm while. And like most human inventions, money begins with a perfectly reasonable idea. That slowly turns into a lifelong species-wide obsession that ruins friendships, families, kingdoms, and occasionally entire continents. So let's drift back, way back, before coins, before banks, before someone tried to sell you crypto using a cartoon monkey. Back to a time when money didn't exist. Early humans didn't have money. They had stuff. You had goats. I had grain. Someone else had a suspicious amount of axes. This system was called barter and it worked beautifully. Right up until it absolutely didn't. Because barter requires two people to want exactly what the other person has at the exact same time. Which is adorable in theory. And a nightmare in real life. If you had wheat and needed shoes, you had to find a shoemaker who was both hungry and willing to accept 40 pounds of grain instead of, something convenient. And if they weren't hungry, tough luck. Enjoy your wheat. Eventually, people realized they needed something everyone agreed had value. Something portable. Something rare. Something shiny. And humans, being humans, immediately chose things like shells, beads, and lumps of metal that did absolutely nothing useful. Gold, in particular, was a hit. You can't eat it. You can't build with it. But it sparkles. And apparently that was enough for all of civilization to collectively say, yes, this will control our lives now. One of the earliest places to really commit to this idea was ancient Lydia, in what is now modern-day Turkey. And Lydia had a king named Croesus. Croesus is famous for being rich. Like cartoonishly rich. The kind of rich where people still use your name as shorthand thousands of years later. Which is impressive, considering he's been dead for a very long time and can't enjoy any of it. Under Croesus, Lydia started minting standardized coins made from electrum, a natural gold-silver alloy. This was huge. Because now value was stamped, official, and inconveniently addictive. Coins spread fast. The Greeks loved them. The Persians copied them. The Romans looked at them and said, yes, but bigger and with my face on it. And that's when money stopped being just a convenience and started being propaganda. Roman emperors plastered their faces on coins so everyone, including illiterate farmers, knew exactly who was in charge. Even if that emperor only lasted 6 months and was replaced by another guy who also insisted on putting his face on everything. Money became political, became symbolic, became emotional, and, of course, it became a way to ruin the economy. Roman emperors had a fun habit of debasing their currency, which is a polite way of saying they diluted gold and silver coins with cheaper metals while pretending nothing had changed. 'Cause why not double down? First no one noticed. Then prices started creeping up. Then people got suspicious. Then the empire started wobbling. Inflation, it turns out, is not a modern invention. It's ancient, aimless, like sandals with socks. After Rome fell, Europe entered a phase where money existed, but not very consistently. Coins were scarce. Trade was local. Most people lived and died without ever seeing gold. Which honestly might have been healthier for them emotionally. Kings, however, were very invested in money. Mostly because they needed it to pay for wars, castles, and extremely elaborate hats. Medieval money was chaotic. Different regions minted different coins. Weights and values varied wildly. And counterfeiting was basically a hobby. People clipped coins, shaved edges off, melted them down. Everyone was cheating everyone else, gently and constantly. Then came paper money, which sounded fake at first. China pioneered paper currency during the Tang and Song dynasties, because carrying sacks of metal around was annoying. And also because bureaucracy never sleeps. Paper money worked. Until governments printed too much of it. Which they did. Repeatedly. Again inflation. Again surprise. Europe took a while to warm up to paper money. People didn't trust it. Because it wasn't shiny. And didn't clink. Eventually banks stepped in. Italian city-states like Florence and Venice became financial powerhouses. Families like the Medici family figured out that lending money was more powerful than ruling territory. Banks invented credit, loans, interest, which meant money could now exist without physically existing. And that's when things got weird. Kings borrowed enormous sums to fund wars, lost those wars, then politely declined to pay the money back. Banking families collapsed overnight. Others quietly became untouchable. By the early modern period, money had become abstract. You didn't need gold anymore. You needed trust. Trust in banks. Trust in governments. Trust that the paper you were holding actually meant something. And most of the time it did. Until it didn't. Fast forward through industrialization, colonial empires, stock markets, central banks, and economic theories written by men who were very confident and often wrong. Money became numbers on ledgers, then numbers on screens, then numbers floating invisibly through servers. Most money today doesn't exist physically. Just agreement, shared belief, a global group project we all pretend is stable. Gold standards came and went. Currencies rose and fell. Inflation kept doing its thing. And here we are, still chasing money, still fighting over it, still letting it define success, failure, worth, and power. All because, thousands of years ago, someone looked at a shiny rock and said, "Yeah, that seems fair. Let's drift onward." There are many more financial mistakes ahead. Next Part 2. When money learned how to breathe without existing. Alright, let's keep floating. No sudden movements. The economy has feelings. When we last drifted off, money had officially stopped being a physical thing you could drop on your foot. It was now an idea, which is always a dangerous phase for any human invention. By the late medieval period, people weren't just trading coins anymore. They were trading promises, written promises, signed promises, promises everyone agreed were definitely going to be honored later. Of course, this is where banking really stretches its legs. And by stretches, I mean quietly rearranges society while everyone else is busy arguing about religion and whose cousin married whose cousin. Italian city-states were leading the charge. Florence, Venice, Genoa. Cities that smelled like money and sea air and mild corruption. Merchants didn't want to carry sacks of coins across Europe. Highwaymen loved that sort of thing. So bankers invented letters of credit. You handed your gold to a banker in Florence. They wrote you a note. You traveled to Paris or London. Another banker read the note and handed you money. Everyone trusted everyone. Which historically is bold. The biggest winners in this system were families who understood that money didn't need to move, as long as debt did. Enter the banking dynasties. Most famously the Medici family, who somehow managed to finance popes, kings, artists, and wars without ever technically ruling anything. They didn't wear crowns. They wore ledgers, which turned out to be much more powerful. Money was no longer just wealth. It was leverage. And leverage changes people. Kings, for instance, became very comfortable borrowing vast sums of money, because future kings could deal with the consequences. That was future kings' problem. When those kings lost wars or died suddenly, banks collapsed. Or didn't. depending on how well connected they were. Some bankers ended up fabulously wealthy. Others ended up mysteriously bankrupt, or exiled, or quietly poisoned. Money by now had fully merged with politics. Then came the age of exploration, which was less about curiosity and more about looking at a map and thinking, there has to be gold over there. European powers sailed outward. They found silver. So much silver. Spain, in particular, struck what historians lovingly call the jackpot. Massive silver mines in the Americas flooded Europe with precious metal. And for about 5 minutes everyone felt rich. Then prices exploded. This was the price revolution. Inflation on a continental scale. Bread cost more. Rent cost more. Wages did not. Which is a familiar pattern that would repeat forever. Money had become global. And that meant mistakes scaled up dramatically. By the 1600s, stock markets appeared. Which is where money learned how to panic. The Dutch were pioneers here. They invented joint stock companies so people could invest in trade voyages without personally drowning at sea. Shares were bought. Shares were sold. Speculation was born. And then came tulips. The Dutch tulip mania is often exaggerated, but the vibe was real. People paid absurd prices for flower bulbs because everyone else was doing it. Eventually, reality returned. Prices collapsed. People panicked. And humanity learned nothing. Paper money spread. Governments issued it. Banks backed it. Sometimes they didn't. France experimented with paper currency under John Law. It went very badly. France tried again later. It went badly again. Revolutions happened. Monarchies fell. Money kept going. By the 18th and 19th centuries, money had become industrial. Factories, wages, time clocks. Your value was now measured by hours, which was efficient and deeply depressing. Gold standards were introduced to keep things stable. They did. Until they didn't. Wars blew through gold reserves. Governments printed money anyway. Inflation followed like it always does. By the 20th century, money was fully abstract. Banks held it. Governments regulated it. Central banks adjusted it with interest rates and charts and very serious meetings. After World War II, the Bretton Woods system tried to anchor global currencies to gold. It worked for a while. Then the gold ran out. And the anchors were quietly removed. Money became fiat, which is a fancy way of saying, it works because we say it does. Credit cards arrived. Debt became normal. Saving became optional. And now, money lives mostly as numbers. In screens. In accounts. In systems too big for any one person to understand. Moves instantly. Disappears quietly. And reappears in places you didn't expect. And still, after all of this, we treat it like a natural force. Like weather. Uncontrollable. Inevitable. Even though we made it. Slowly. Accidentally. And with a shocking amount of confidence. Let's keep drifting. Because the modern world hasn't made money any calmer. Next Part 3. When money officially left the building. Alright. Still here. Still floating. Nobody checked their bank balance. We're trying to relax. By the mid-20th century, money had reached its final form. Not gold. Not paper. Not even numbers you could hold in a book. Just trust. Carefully regulated trust. With committees. After World War II, the world was exhausted, broke, and extremely motivated to not do that again. So global leaders gathered for a very serious meeting called the Bretton Woods Conference. The idea was simple, which is usually a warning sign. Currencies would be tied to the US dollar. The US dollar would be tied to gold. And everyone would promise to behave responsibly. For a while it worked. The post-war economy boomed. Factories ran. Middle classes grew. Money felt stable, which meant it was quietly becoming unstable. The problem was that the US was printing dollars faster than it had gold to back them. Because wars are expensive. And social programs are expensive. And elections are emotionally expensive. Other countries started asking awkward questions like, "So, can we see the gold?" By the early 1970s, the illusion was getting tired. In 1971, Richard Nixon went on television and calmly announced that the United States would no longer convert dollars into gold. Just like that. No gold. No anchor. No going back. Money officially became fiat currency everywhere. Which means it has value because governments say it does. And because we all agree not to question it too loudly. Surprisingly, the system didn't collapse. It wobbled. Inflation spiked. People complained. But the world adjusted. Banks adapted. Central banks became incredibly important. Interest rates turned into emotional weapons. Money could now be created digitally, which made it faster and more confusing. Credit cards spread. By now, pay later became a lifestyle. Debt stopped being shameful and started being normal. Homes were bought with loans. Cars with loans. Education with loans. Entire lives built on the assumption that future income would fix present problems. Stock markets grew. Retirement funds depended on them. Which meant everyone was now emotionally invested in abstract lines going up. And when they went down, people panicked. Quietly. Their desk. By the late 20th century, money barely existed physically. Most transactions happened electronically. You didn't have money. You accessed it. Banks held it. Showed it. Fees gently shaved pieces off it. Then came the internet. Online banking. Digital payments. Instant transfers. Money became invisible. Which made it feel infinite. Until it wasn't. Financial crises arrived on schedule. Markets overheated. Collapsed. Recovered. Governments bailed out banks. Banks resumed business as usual. And the average person learned slowly and calmly that money followed different rules depending on who you were. Then, inevitably, someone asked, what if we made money without banks? And that's how we arrived at cryptocurrencies. Digital money. Decentralized. Trustless. Backed by math and optimism. For a moment it felt revolutionary. People talked about freedom. And decentralization. And the future. Then scams happened. Then speculation happened. Then very tired explanations happened at dinner tables. Crypto didn't replace money. Joined the pile. Alongside cash. Cards. Credits. Debits. Tokens. Money now exists everywhere and nowhere. Something you earn. Something you owe. Something you chase. Something you worry about at night. All while knowing deep down that it's a human invention. No laws of nature involved. Just agreements. Enforced politely. Or not. And that's the strange calm truth about money. It isn't real. But its consequences absolutely are. And somehow, after thousands of years of mistakes, we still wake up every morning, check a number on a screen, and let it decide how we feel. Which might be the most human thing of all. Let's stay here a little longer. Nothing's changing just yet. Next Part 4. When we pretended this was normal. Alright. Still drifting. Still breathing. Still agreeing collectively that all of this makes sense. By the time we reach the early 21st century, money isn't just abstract. It's background noise. Hums. Quietly. Constantly. You don't think about it when it works. You only notice it when something goes wrong. Direct deposits arrive like clockwork. Subscriptions renew themselves without asking. Tiny monthly charges accumulate silently, like financial moss growing on a damp rock. And because money is now mostly digital, it moves faster than humans are emotionally equipped to handle. Markets react in milliseconds. Algorithms trade with algorithms. Entire fortunes shift before anyone finishes a cup of coffee. This is where money stops feeling like something you use and starts feeling like something that uses you. Central banks became the quiet gods of the system. They don't shout. They don't threaten. They just adjust interest rates. 0.25% here. 0.5 point there. And suddenly mortgages feel heavier. Savings feel lighter. And everyone starts using words like soft landing, while looking slightly stressed. The most powerful currency in the world became the US dollar. Not because it's perfect, but because everyone else agreed to use it. Oil is priced in it. Trade is settled in it. Debts are owed in it. Which means decisions made in Washington ripple outward, quietly across the planet. Countries with weaker currencies feel it first. Inflation creeps in. Imported goods cost more. Wages lag behind. And ordinary people once again absorb the shock. Money, despite being imaginary, is remarkably good at causing real anxiety. Then came the financial crisis of 2008, which felt sudden to the public, and extremely predictable to anyone who had been paying attention. Banks had bundled debt into other debt, sold it, resold it, rated it safe. Because optimism is contagious. When the system cracked, government stepped in. Banks were rescued. Markets stabilized. And people learned a quiet lesson. Some institutions are too big to fail. And some people are not. Trust wobbled. But it didn't break. Because money at this point had no alternative. Then came mobile payments. Face recognition. You could buy coffee without touching anything, which felt futuristic and slightly unsettling. Cash became optional, then suspicious. Children grew up thinking money lived inside phones, which honestly makes as much sense as anything else. During global crises, governments printed enormous amounts of money. Stimulus, relief, support. And once again, inflation followed later like an echo. Prices rose. Explanations multiplied. Blame moved around politely. And through it all, the system continued. Not because it was perfect, but because stopping it would be worse. Money survived kings, empires, revolutions, wars. It adapted to paper, then plastic, then pixels. And now it exists mostly as faith. Faith that tomorrow will look enough like today. Faith that numbers will remain meaningful. Faith that everyone else will keep playing along. Which they do. Because the alternative is terrifying. And that's where we are. A species that invented money to simplify trade. And ended up building its entire emotional landscape around it. We measure success in it. Failure in it, security in it. We say things like time is money, even though time is real and money very much isn't. And yet, here we are, still working, still earning, still worrying, all because long ago we decided that value needed a symbol, and then forgot it was a symbol. Stay relaxed. Nothing is changing right now. Money will still be there in the morning. Probably. Next Part 5. When we all quietly agreed not to talk about it too loudly. Alright. Last stretch. No sudden realizations. No checking investment apps. Just let the idea of money float past you like a cloud you don't need to name. By now, money isn't something most people think about in a historical sense. Just there. Like gravity. Or taxes. We grow up learning how to earn it before we learn where it came from. We're told to respect it, chase it, Save it. Spend it wisely. Very few people are told that it's all held together by shared belief and careful maintenance. Economists tried to explain money. They wrote books, equations. Adam Smith talked about markets like they were natural systems, guided by invisible hands, which sounded comforting, like someone was in control. Later thinkers argued about value, labor, scarcity, confidence. None of them fully agreed, which is probably for the best. Money isn't logical enough to be solved. It's emotional. People don't panic because numbers change. They panic because numbers mean something. A higher number feels safe. A lower number feels personal, even when nothing material has changed. And that's the quiet trick money plays. Turns abstract systems into feelings. Anxiety, relief, pride, shame. Entire lives are shaped around it. Where you live, who you marry, what you risk, what you never even try. All influenced by something that only works because everyone agrees not to question it at the same time. Governments manage it carefully. Banks guard it closely. Markets react to rumors about it. And every so often the system shakes. Just enough to remind everyone it's human-made. Then it settles. And we move on. Because money, like most large systems, doesn't need to be perfect. Just needs to keep going. And it does. From shells, coins, paper, to promises, to pixels. From barter to banking. From kings to committees. From gold vaults to server farms humming quietly somewhere far away. All of it built layer by layer. Mistake by mistake. Reform by reform. Not in 1 minute. But across thousands of years of trial, error, and confident improvisation. So when you hear someone say money isn't real, they're half right. It isn't physical. It isn't natural. It isn't inevitable. But it is effective. And sometimes that's all humanity needs to keep something alive. So take a breath. Let the numbers rest. History has seen far worse systems than this one. And somehow we're still here. Still trading. Still trusting. Still pretending we understand it all. And that, very calmly, is the history of money. Next Part 6. The 1 minute that never ends. Alright, we'll linger a little. Because history never really knows when to stop talking. By this point, money has done its favorite trick. It has disappeared into the background so completely that most people forget it ever had a beginning. No one wakes up thinking about shells, or electrum coins, or medieval bankers nervously counting ledgers by candlelight. They wake up thinking about rent, about bills, about whether the number will be enough this month. And that's the quiet power of money. Not that it's loud, but that it's constant. It doesn't demand your attention, just gently applies pressure. Every day. Even the people who claim not to care about money, still care about what it provides. 50. Options. Which means money has become a proxy for peace of mind. A very fragile proxy. And that's why every generation reinvents the same arguments. Should money be controlled? By whom? How much is too much? Who deserves it? These questions never resolve. They just change vocabulary. Once kings argued over gold. Then governments argued over paper. Now we argue over digital numbers moving through invisible systems. Different shapes. Same anxiety. What's strange is how calm we've become about it. Entire economies rise and fall. Markets swing wildly. Currencies inflate. And most people still go to work the next morning. They buy coffee. They tap a card. They glance at a screen. Money works best when it feels boring. That's when it's doing its job. The moment it becomes exciting, something has usually gone very wrong. Speculators rush in. Headlines appear. Explanations get louder. Then, eventually the system sighs and returns to normal. Because money isn't designed to make sense. It's designed to continue. It absorbs criticism, survives reform, outlives outrage. Empires fall. Currencies are renamed. Zeros are added or removed. And still value is assigned. Still prices exist. Still someone is keeping score. So when someone says, "The history of money in 1 minute," what they really mean is, the history of human agreement. An agreement to believe, to trade, to trust symbols. An agreement renewed every day. Without a meeting, without a vote, without anyone fully understanding the whole thing. And somehow, it works well enough. Not perfectly, not fairly, but well enough that the lights stay on. So as you drift off, remember this gently comforting thought. Money isn't a force of nature. It's a story we keep telling. And like all long stories, it only survives because people keep listening and keep playing their part. No rush, no urgency. History will still be there tomorrow. Next Part 7. The quiet fade out nobody notices. Alright, we'll slow it down even more now. Because this is where history usually lowers its voice and lets you drift. Money doesn't end. Just keeps going. There's no final chapter where humanity figures it out. No moment where everyone agrees it's fair, balanced, and emotionally healthy. That would be wildly out of character for us. Instead, money settles into routine. Budgets get made. Bills get paid. Debts get postponed. People learn to live inside the system the same way fish learn to live in water. They don't question it much. They just navigate. Occasionally, someone steps back and asks why we do any of this. Why a number can decide comfort or stress. Why a symbol can open doors or quietly close them. Those moments pass. Because dinner needs cooking. And work starts in the morning. Money doesn't need belief anymore. It runs on habit, on momentum, on the quiet understanding that opting out isn't really an option. And so the story continues. New technologies will arrive. New currencies will be proposed. New systems will promise fairness, speed, freedom. Some will help. Some will fail. Some will quietly merge back into the old ways. And through it all, the core idea stays the same. Value. Agreed upon. Represented. And exchanged. Not in 1 minute. But across lifetimes. So if this felt longer than advertised, that's kind of the point. Money has never been quick. Just pretends to be. Took centuries to form. It will take centuries to change. And tonight you don't need to solve it. Just let it be what it is. A human invention. Messy. Persistent. Oddly comforting in its familiarity. You can rest now. The numbers will still be there tomorrow. History will still be unfinished. And the shiny rock will still be shiny. Good night. Next Part 9. The last coin under the pillow. Alright. We're almost fully adrift now. This is the part where the story stops trying to teach you anything at all. Because money doesn't need another explanation. It's had thousands of them. Most of them confident. Many of them wrong. At some point, every society reaches the same quiet understanding. Money is less about value, and more about coordination. Helps strangers cooperate. It lets people exchange effort without knowing each other. Turns trust into something portable. Clumsy. Imperfect. But portable. And once that realization settles in, people stop asking where money comes from. And start asking where it's going. Careers are planned around it. Cities are shaped by it. Lives are paced by pay cycles. Even rebellion is priced. Those who reject money usually still need it. At least a little. Enough to eat. enough to exist, which tells you something important. Money isn't just a tool anymore. It's infrastructure. You don't notice roads unless they crack. You don't notice plumbing unless it fails. You don't notice money unless it disappears. And when it does, everything feels strangely quiet. Empty shelves, frozen transactions, confused faces. That's when people remember that this invisible thing holds everything together. And then very carefully they rebuild it, rename it, reissue it. Because starting over without money turns out to be harder than fixing it. So the cycle continues. Children grow up hearing adults talk about money in hushed tones, as something stressful, something important. They inherit the same worries, the same hopes, the same belief that more would make things easier. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just changes the shape of the anxiety. And through all of this, money never asks for worship. It doesn't demand love. It just quietly asks to be taken seriously, which we do every day. So when historians talk about money, they're really talking about us, our fears, our shortcuts, our need to simplify the world into numbers we can manage. Money didn't shape humanity alone. Humanity shaped money, and then let it shape them back. Fair trade maybe, or maybe just the easiest one available at the time. And that's where we'll leave it. No grand conclusion, no final verdict, just a long, unbroken agreement stretching behind us, and ahead of us, into another quiet tomorrow. You can rest now. The story will keep counting on its own. Next Part 10. When the lights stay on anyway. Alright. This is the true end now. The kind that doesn't announce itself. Money doesn't conclude with a lesson. It fades out the way it entered. Quietly. Practically. Without asking how you feel about it. By now, it's no longer remarkable that most of your life is mediated through numbers you never see. Your labor becomes digits. Those digits become permissions, access, stability, or the lack of it. And yet the system hums along. Electricity flows. Water runs. Food appears on shelves. All coordinated by this invisible mechanism everyone pretends is solid. That's the strange success of money. Not that it's moral. Not that it's fair. But that it works often enough. When it fails, historians rush in later to explain why. Too much printing. Too little regulation. Bad incentives. Worse timing. They're usually right. And it usually doesn't matter. Because the system doesn't stop. Digest. Rebrands. Adds a few new rules and keeps moving. People learn to live inside those adjustments the way previous generations learned to live with coins, or paper or plastic. Nothing feels strange when it's all you've ever known. And that may be the most important part of the story. Money feels natural not because it is, but because it's old enough to feel inevitable. You weren't asked if you wanted it. You were born into it. Just like the people before you. And the people before them. Bills, metal, paper, credit, code. Different skins on the same idea. A shared fiction that lets billions of strangers cooperate without speaking. That's not nothing. So when someone jokes about explaining the history of money in 1 minute, they're pointing at something deeper than a timeline. They're pointing at how casually humans accept the systems that run their lives. How quickly inventions become assumptions. How rarely we pause to remember that all of this, every transaction, every paycheck, every late-night worry about numbers, started as a convenience and became a constant. There's no moral here. No warning. No reassurance. Just a quiet observation. Money didn't make us human, but once we made it, we never really learned how to live without it. And that's okay. For tonight, you don't need to fix it. You don't need to understand it. You just need to rest. The system will still be running when you wake up. The numbers will still be there. And history will still be unfinished. Good night. Next Pat. Part 11. The endless tick of something that isn't there. Alright. Let's settle even deeper now. No sudden thoughts. No trying to catch every detail. Just let it float past you. Money isn't loud. Never shouts. It doesn't demand attention. Yet quietly it coordinates almost everything you do. From waking up to go to work, to putting food on a plate, to the gentle clicking of keys that let numbers move invisibly around the globe. It doesn't care if you notice. It only works if you don't. We think about it when it disappears, when it vanishes or multiplies or feels unjust. Those are the only moments it becomes visible. Like air after a storm. For centuries, people have been agreeing on symbols to represent value. Oils, gold, paper, electronic digits. The method changes. The anxiety remains. And here's the thing. That's exactly how money survives. It doesn't need to be understood. It doesn't need to be loved. It just needs to be treated as meaningful enough that people continue to accept it. Which we do. Every day. Generations have added layers. Coins, notes, banks, ledgers, credit, apps, crypto. Each iteration builds on the previous one, quietly layering stability and complexity. And through all of it, the underlying principle is the same. We trust each other enough to say a number equals something real. It's fragile. It's invisible. It's deeply human. That's why money can crash, rise, disappear, or explode, and still survive. Because it's more than metal, paper, or pixels. It's cooperation. It's faith. It's habit. And when we wake tomorrow, it will be there. Still moving. Still counting. Still quietly guiding lives we never asked it to guide. And that is the history of money. Not in 1 minute. Not in simple terms. But in every subtle tick, every silent transaction, every quiet agreement we carry forward. Sleep now. The numbers will keep ticking. History will keep whispering. And the world will keep turning as it always has. Good night. Next Pat. Part 12. The soft echo that never stops. Alright. Let's drift just a little further. No urgency. No need to track each century or digit. Just let it settle in the background like a very quiet hum. Money has no real finish line. It doesn't retire. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't pause for reflection. It exists because we keep agreeing it should. Because a handful of humans long ago decided that shiny rocks were useful. Because people liked numbers on paper. Because coins made trade easier than bartering livestock. And every step after that is us repeating the same agreement in slightly different forms. Coins became notes. Notes became banks. Banks became credit. Credit became digital. Digital became algorithms we can't see. Yet each new form serves the same quiet purpose. Keeps the world running. Keeps people cooperating. It keeps civilization humming along, mostly unnoticed. That's why money feels inevitable. Because it is, as long as we keep agreeing. History has tried to warn us. Inflation. Market crashes. Financial crises. Hyperinflation. And still we rebuild. Because life without it in our current form is far more complicated. And so the soft echo continues. Numbers move. Trust shifts. Debt accumulates. And every morning millions of humans participate without even realizing it. That is money's quiet genius. It's everywhere, invisible, persistent. It shapes us without demanding applause. It organizes us without asking permission. And maybe that's the most remarkable part. That such an abstract, fragile, entirely human invention could quietly hold a world together. for thousands of years. So as you drift off, imagine it. Coins, notes, digits, agreements, all flowing silently around the globe. A river you never see. But that shapes the land it touches. You don't need to understand it. You don't need to interact with it. You just need to let it exist. The hum will continue. The numbers will keep moving. History will keep whispering. And you can rest. Good night. Next Pat. Part 13. The invisible thread that holds everything. Alright. One more gentle float. No rush. No details to memorize. Just let the quiet of history carry you. Money is, in a way, like an invisible thread connecting millions of tiny lives. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. Just runs quietly underneath everything. It touches our mornings, our evenings, our smallest choices. Coffee we buy. The bus we take. The roof over our heads. It organizes society without anyone noticing. It assigns value to things that aren't valuable. It gives structure to things that would otherwise float untethered. And for something so abstract, it's remarkably effective. We invented it. We shaped it. We argued over it. We tried to destroy it. And yet, survives. Every crisis, every collapse, every financial panic. Money adapts, transforms, continues. We've gone from shells to coins, from coins to paper, from paper to digits, from digits to invisible code. Each step adds complexity. Each step adds distance from its humble beginning. A shiny rock someone decided had value. And still it binds us all. Quietly, persistent, almost unnoticed. Until it isn't. That's the remarkable truth. Money isn't real. Not in a physical sense. Not in a universal sense. It only exists because we believe it does. And because we act as if it does. That agreement, maintained for thousands of years, is the most enduring human experiment. So as you drift even deeper, let yourself release the urge to understand it fully. It doesn't need you to comprehend, just needs you to let it be. And in that quiet acceptance, the world keeps turning. Transactions hum in the background. Numbers flicker silently across screens. History keeps whispering. And you can finally rest. Good night. Part 14. The calm persistence of numbers. Alright, let's stay quiet. No sudden thoughts. No need to follow a timeline. Just let the presence of money float gently around your mind. Money has survived because it adapts, changes form, changes rules, changes perception. Coins melted, coins minted. Paper printed, paper devalued. Banks created, banks bailed out. Digital numbers appeared, disappeared, multiplied. Through all of this, people continued their lives. Trading, buying, selling, working, resting. Trusting invisible systems. Believing in something fragile, abstract, entirely human. It's strange to think about. A thing that isn't physical. That isn't universal. That depends entirely on shared belief. Has shaped the world more than armies or kings or laws. Money hums along quietly, orchestrating daily life. It's rarely noticed when it works, only felt when it fails. And yet it doesn't tire, doesn't argue, doesn't collapse permanently. Even after crises, even after wars, even after generations of mistakes. It adapts, persists, continues. And that persistence is what gives civilization its rhythm. From the smallest transactions, buying bread, trading tools, to the largest unseen movements of global finance. Money is the silent pulse, the invisible thread, the background hum that keeps society moving. So you don't need to engage with it tonight. You don't need to calculate or worry. You can let it exist quietly like the air around you. History will keep whispering. Money will keep moving. And you can finally close your eyes. Good night. Part 15. The soft hum that carries on. Alright. We'll drift even deeper now. No need to track coins, numbers, or dates. Just let the idea of money float like a gentle current. Money has a quiet kind of power. It doesn't need to be impressive. It doesn't need to be forceful. Just exist. Persistent. Patient. Shapes lives subtly. The route people take to work. The food they eat. The decisions they make. Most people only notice it when it falters. When the numbers don't add up. When prices rise too quickly. When wages lag behind expectations. But even then it doesn't vanish. It adapts. Persists. It moves forward quietly. And that's why money survives centuries. It doesn't rely on strength or beauty. It relies on belief. Shared, gentle, quiet agreement that a number represents something real. We created it. We maintain it. We trust it. And in return, it guides the rhythm of our lives. From shells to coins. Coins to paper. Paper to electronic numbers. Electronic numbers to invisible code. Always the same principle. Value agreed upon. Exchanged. Trusted. And so the quiet hum continues. Through centuries, generations, and civilizations. Money remains. Changing, adapting. But never stopping. And you can let yourself drift with that hum. No need to worry. No need to calculate. Just let it exist gently as it always has. Sleep now. The world will keep moving. The numbers will keep counting. And tomorrow, the silent pulse of money will still be there. Good night. Part 16. The invisible rhythm that never sleeps. Alright. We're deep into the calm now. No need for urgency. No need to keep score. Just float along with the quiet pulse of money. By now, money is no longer something you touch. It's a rhythm. System. An invisible hum that guides the world. People wake, work, eat, sleep. Transactions flow in the background like tides. Sometimes noticed. Mostly ignored. The curious thing is how fully humans have internalized it. We rarely stop to question why a number can mean safety or anxiety. Why abstract symbols dictate decisions more than physical objects ever could. Yet we follow the rhythm willingly. Central banks adjust invisible levers. Markets respond in milliseconds. People feel the effects hours later. And life carries on. Money is everywhere and nowhere. A ghost with practical consequences. A story told in ledgers, apps, banknotes, and digital digits. A story so old that it feels natural, inevitable, even though it's entirely human-made. And that's the gentle truth. Money survives because we sustain it. Because we believe in it. Because we act as if it matters every single day. History, in a way, is less about kings and wars here. And more about this quiet, ongoing agreement. An invisible thread running through centuries. And as you settle into that thought, you realize, you don't need to understand it fully. You don't need to manage it. You can simply exist in its current, letting it continue quietly. The pulse is steady. The rhythm is calm. The world continues. Sleep now. Tomorrow, the quiet hum of numbers will still guide everything. Good night. Part 17. The quiet machine that never stops. Alright. Let's drift even deeper. No need to track every number, coin, or ledger. Just let the concept of money settle around you like a soft, invisible current. Money now lives in systems. Banks. Markets. Algorithms. Transactions that happen faster than any human could notice. And yet, it moves with remarkable calm, steady, persistent. unseen except when it pauses, stumbles, or shifts. History has made it clear. Money doesn't require understanding. It only requires participation. A gentle agreement repeated daily. Centuries of trust, error, and improvisation carry it forward. Shells, coins, paper, numbers, digital code. Each layer building on the last. Each layer ensuring the rhythm continues. People go about their lives. Morning coffee, rent, groceries, wages. All orchestrated by this invisible mechanism. Rarely noticed when it works. Suddenly felt when it doesn't. And still the system hums. Adapt. Persist. This is the beauty of it. Money doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't need fairness. It only needs continuity. And humanity has provided that continuity, quietly for thousands of years. From ancient traders with shells in their hands, to digital transactions on glowing screens, the principle remains the same. Value agreed upon, exchanged, trusted, and that, very quietly, is the story that continues today. Let it settle. Let it hum in the background of your mind. No need to fix it. No need to challenge it. The invisible machine keeps moving. And you can finally rest. Good night. Part 18. The silent current that guides everything. Alright. We'll settle even further now. No rush. No abrupt thoughts. Just the quiet presence of money, moving around us like an invisible current. Money doesn't need to be seen to have power. It doesn't need to be held to influence decisions. It flows through societies, shaping behavior, guiding choices, marking success or failure, without ever asking permission. People wake, trade, and sleep. Numbers shift on screens. Transactions happen faster than perception. And yet life continues without obvious disruption. History has shown that money's endurance depends less on laws or coins, and more on human belief. We agree, we trust, we act, and with each action, the system quietly reinforces itself. From ancient seashells to digital currencies, the principle is the same. Shared trust sustains exchange. Sometimes it fails. Markets crash. Banks falter. Inflation rises. And panic spreads. Then slowly, quietly the system adjusts. New rules. New currencies. New structures. And the rhythm returns. This is money's subtle genius. It survives human error, war, greed, and apathy. Because people keep agreeing to participate. And in that agreement the world keeps moving. Cities function. Trade continues. Lives unfold. Even when we don't notice it. Even when we think we understand it. Money is not just a tool. It's infrastructure. It's invisible. It's persistent. And tonight, as you drift toward sleep, you can let it remain unseen. Let it hum. Let it guide. History will keep whispering. Numbers will keep shifting. And you can rest. Good night. Part 19. The long, gentle drift of everything. Alright. Let's slow even further. No urgency. No dates. No numbers you have to remember. Just the quiet, patient presence of money, stretching through time. By now, money is less a thing than a rhythm. A background hum running under all human activity. It's in the marketplaces, the offices, the streets. In the quiet gestures of exchange, the nods, the handshakes, the presses of buttons. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't roar. It flows gently, guiding behavior, shaping possibilities. Centuries of human action have built it into a network so vast and subtle that most people barely notice it. Shells, coins, paper, electronic digits. All layers of the same agreement. Trust, value, exchange. And the strange part is how well it works. Even imperfect, even fragile, even invisible. Keeps society functioning. Markets crash. Currencies shift. Governments falter. And still the rhythm continues. Adjustments happen. People adapt. Life carries on. Money is more than gold, paper, or code. It is coordination. It is trust. It is the quiet machine we barely see, but rely on every day. Even when we forget it's there, it shapes our routines, our decisions, our lives. It allows civilizations to function without every individual knowing all the details. And that's the subtle, calming truth. Money survives because humans agree to it. Repeatedly, patiently, quietly. Tonight you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to understand it fully. Just let it exist. The currents of exchange will keep moving. The silent machine will keep humming. And you can drift fully into sleep. Good night.